Ever since plier-based multi-tools came out in the 80s, we have been wanting something that we can fully customize and would be delivered exactly the way we want it. And finally, Roxxon has taken the steps to allow us to do exactly that. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the pre-order, how you can actually build your ideal multi-tool, and I'm going to give you some very important tricks that will completely change how you build these things. So without any delay, let's get started. So if you saw my video last week about the Roxxon, just forget it. Please, forget that video. I'm going to leave it up for people to watch. But everything I said there is basically a moot point because there is no static price for this tool anymore. And there is no set tool set that will come with it. You get to choose what's going to be in your tool. But it gets way better than that, because I just recently discovered that the idea that it only fits 2 long implements in this tool is completely false, and you can fit up to 4 even without modification. Yes, I'm serious. I will show you exactly what that looks like in a few minutes, but I wanted to get that off my chest as quickly as possible. We'll start with the frame, and we'll talk about the price. So this is going to start at $40, right? And you can just buy the frame without anything else, which is going to be great in the future, because if you have all your implements and you just want a second handle to accommodate what you have left over, you can buy it by itself. That is already different from basically anything we've seen out there. And it's also going to be possible to buy just an individual implement. You can do all of that through the pre-order. Now, when you're setting this up, you'll notice that there is a little ball detent in the frame which engages with the long implements, keeping them from being accidentally deployed, and gives it an additional little detent when you go to open it. However, it is not strictly necessary, and as I load this up with 4 long implements, you'll see that it doesn't really matter as long as we have these locking mechanisms, which a lot of people kind of didn't understand, so I will clarify. It is not a piece of plastic engaging with any metal. What it does is it slides this metal bar over, which then puts itself underneath the lock bar, preventing that lock bar from moving. That's how this works. So there's nothing wrong with the plastic at all. It's just basically something to grip onto that slides a piece of metal into place. So great. I don't have any problem with that plastic being there. I just hope that answered some people's questions about the tool. Now, spring-loaded pliers, replaceable cutters. The other thing I want to point out that I was wrong about in my last video, I said that maybe they should adjust these cutters so there's no gap. Little did I realize, and someone pointed out in the comments, that because this is oval shaped, it changes the distance to the cutters as it opens. So you actually have to have that space. So we can ignore that critique. The pocket clip thing that I talked about is still true. I actually think that it's perfectly fine where it is, and it's not going to be a big issue. Okay, now let's get to how you could build your custom tool, right? Because this is absolutely something you have to understand. I'm not even sure how, when something is so open like this and it can be done by, basically anyone the way they want, it's very hard to discuss, but I'm going to sort of illustrate this as best I can. I'm going to start on this side and notice that there's actually quite a bit of space next to that plier. Not quite enough to put 2 long implements unless you use the correct 2. So if I start with the file, and it could be this one, or it could be the diamond file, which I do not have on the table. I'll show a picture of it here. You can then combine that with any of the blades, which are tapered, right? See that? They're tapered, and if you put that next to it, yeah, that will slide very nicely. You then have 3 more slots, and although I'm not going to go through each of the individual implements, I will at a later time. Take 3 different implements, and in this case, it doesn't really matter. I'm just showing it for the purposes of the long implement installment. So let me put all these in there, like so. And then we close this up, and now we have all of our tools together. Now notice, no issue at all. The blade does not come in contact with the plier head. Even though it's technically not designed for this, it can actually accommodate two long tools if you put a blade next to either a saw, scissor, or file. Or I guess the also the scalpel holder, which is, there's a long version and a short version, something I don't actually own. And this is a game changer for a lot of people. This was the reason people were choosing not to buy it, because it couldn't accommodate 4 long tools. Guess what? It absolutely can, and this is absolutely going to change the game. Amazing. Like, amazing, amazing. I love the fact that this works. Now, it gets better. So the blades are not the only thing you can put next to the plier, but the tool that I'm going to talk about, it can only go on one of the 2 sides, and I'll explain why. So we close that up. So we're going to unlock this one. Now it's in its unlocked position. I'm going to start with the saw. So put the saw in there next to the ball detent. And then I'm going to take the scissor. Now you'll notice that the scissor, the total dimension is 2 millimeters, but only half of it, of course, is just 1 mil. So if you put it on this side of the plier where the lower blade is away from the plier, it basically passes it without touching it. There's plenty of space for it to fit just nicely. And what's keeping it from going down is not the blade, it's just a little bit of the metal here on this tool. And if they decide to just remove this much of the tool, and this does not impact the ergonomics whatsoever. It's bothering me. Got to look a little nicer. If they just remove that much, this thing will sit flushly. Flushly? Is that a word? Flush to the frame when it closes. And even without any modification at all, you can see it's not even that bad. It's not even standing that far up. Now let me get the rest of the tools in here and you can kind of see what it looks like. So there's, you have 3 more. So I'm just going to put the Phillips in here just to kind of make it a little bit easier, which is twice as thick as a normal tool. And you can see, even without like doing too much, it still works. Now you're definitely going to want to make sure you use these locks, because the long implement that's next to the one closest to the frame, it can come out a little bit easier. So make sure you use that lock to keep it from springing out, and that will help quite a bit. These are very, very, very important. So yeah, I just have 4 long implements in here now. 4 long implements. I mean, that is absolutely going to change the game. They only have to make small changes to their tangs and various different things for this to be a common, easy to do thing. And I would imagine you could even change the shape of the file slightly so it tapers down to a narrower point, and it would fit next to another long implement as well. So there's many ways I could see this working. And when you go to order this, it's going to show the extra long implements kind of as an add-on. But if you don't fill in all the spaces, you can still order the tool exactly as you want it. What they're going to do is they're going to fill the blank spaces that you leave in the pre-order with little plastic inserts. So that way, you know, you can still function with the tool. You keep the inserts, but then you just install the rest, just like you see here. This completely changes everything with the Roxxon Flex. So we thought it was just going to accommodate 2 long implements. And now that we know it doesn't, well, I mean, kind of the sky's the limit at this point, right? Okay, so from here on in, and you're welcome to kind of go and explore the pre-order down below. I'll leave a link. The rest of this video is going to be dedicated to each of the individual implements, talking about their, you know, how good they are, which ones you should and shouldn't get, and so on. So you can stop here, you can go take a look at the pre-order, but for specific information on each implement, we will be doing it in this video. So we're going to start with the long implements, and then we'll work our way into the smaller ones. The scissor on this, and a lot of people have asked, how good does it perform? I am scared to say that this might be one of the best performing scissors I've ever used, and is damn near comparable to the Victorinox, and I don't say that lightly. This rates in my top 3 on a multi-tool ever. Now, it's not particularly thick, so it's not something you want to use on like heavy duty zip ties, but as precision cutting implement, specifically, I think this is a fantastic scissor. And so this is absolutely something you're going to want to add to your tool, even if it's an extra. You're going to want to have access to it. It's fantastic. The same thing is true with the saw. I got a chance to use it. I'd say it cuts, how good would I say? Probably about 90% of the cutting capability of the Victorinox. Maybe even a little bit better because the cutting edge goes all the way out to the end. It's hard to say, but yet another implement you're definitely going to want to have, regardless of if you're getting a blade custom made or not. Now the files. I have with me a crosscut and straight cut file. Now, as far as the aggressiveness of it, it's not bad, but I have found that in general, these files don't tend to be very good. Even the best companies out there, like compared to say the crosscut on the Victorinox or on the rebar, this is so much less aggressive. I would absolutely go with the diamond file over this file any day of the week, 100%. And in fact, real quick, the crosscut on this small tool is about the same texture. So if you want the diamond file and you go with this flathead, you actually will have a nice little combination. And something that none of those tools have is the diamond file for Roxxon has 2 different grits. That's pretty cool. So definitely the diamond file. I would probably skip this one, especially because you have the crosscut on the small flathead. Okay, now the blades. They actually did a very, very good job on these. They are very similar to what you will find in the Leatherman rebar. I especially like the serrated blade because they made nice shallow cuts in this. It's not super aggressive, meaning it's going to pull through things very well and be good enough at slicing tasks that you may not need the straight blade. And if you carry a folding knife, I probably would end up using the serrated blade more because it does something different than your normal folder will, right? It just cuts the man-made materials better and kind of works, you know, a little bit better, just my opinion. Now, both of these are made in 4116 stainless, which is a pretty decent basic stainless. It's much better than 420. Not as good, I would say, as 420 HC, but somewhere in that Swiss Army knife kind of range of toughness, hardness, and so on. Okay, so not bad. You're probably going to want to pick one blade unless you're going to get a blank, which you can do, and make your own, or get one custom made where the files are available on Roxxon's website. Okay, what other long implements do we want to talk about? I almost forgot. This is actually a long implement. This is the scalpel holder. It works with the larger, Havalon style scalpels, but they also have, and this is really cool, a small variation, a short one. And I think that that's always going to be better than this. So I don't recommend buying the long version as much as I do buying the smaller one, because I think it's just a little bit more versatile and you can kind of move things around a little bit easier in your tool. That's just my opinion. And if you think there's a reason why you would want this instead, let me know down below. It is going to have a much, much longer cutting edge. And I guess I kind of answered my own question. If you live in an area that's maybe non-permissive and you maybe need to travel and they don't allow blades, you can kind of leave it empty and then fill it in when you need it. So I guess there's the reason right there. And that doesn't mean you can't go with a small variation, but maybe you like the longer blade when you finally do install it. Okay, moving on from there, we'll go to the short implements, the ones that fit kind of in the middle of the tool. And this is where we're going to talk about something that I don't have, that they said they weren't going to be able to make, but it turns out they have available, and that is going to be the bit driver. Now, first of all, the price of it is great. At $6 is a really nice price for being able to buy multiples, and you could theoretically put 2, one on each side of your tool. And this is kind of important. It takes up 4 slots, or 8mm total thickness, and it only works with standard 1/4" bits. And that's not actually a bad thing. When you see those tools that have the double-sided bits, they're very, very deep, meaning that they don't work with standard 1/4" very well. you know, if they're designed properly, there's some that are better. This is only going to work with standard 1/4 inch bits. I don't think that's going to be a problem for a lot of people, but it means that you're going to want to probably have at least one flathead in your tool to complement the Phillips, which you're likely to leave inside the bit driver, right? So keeping that in mind, it also appears that it is flush, like it comes to a flush edge instead of an angled one. So if you want to use it as a 1/4 inch driver, you know, for those screw nuts that are sometimes on HVAC units, it will work with that, which I'm actually pretty happy that they did that as well. Now, moving on, they also have a Ferro Serum Rod with a plastic holder that'll work in there. It takes up 3 slots or 6 millimeters. That may be an option, but I just think it's probably a little bit wasteful. I am hoping that they will make the same thing, but with a ceramic hone instead. Oh my God, that would be great. That would be very, very useful to have your tool have both a diamond file with 2 different grits and a ceramic hone. I hope they make that. So that's my request. Please make that. That would be amazing. I don't recommend it though, unless you just want it as a spare. Maybe you keep it in your little kit, because there's just not a lot of that like Ferro Serum Rod in there, and you're just probably better off carrying it separately. That's just my personal opinion, but feel free to disagree. Now, going to small tools besides those, which I think we have all of them except for the scalpel holder, you have the flathead, which I do wish that they would bring the measurements all the way up to the edge so you could actually use it as a depth gauge. But yeah, this has a measuring surface on one side, a crosscut file on the other, and a flathead. It's okay. We have a can opener here with a small flathead and a 2-dimensional Phillips. This is actually done really, really well, and it does do a pretty decent job on cans. I also believe that it's possible to make this into a spoon gouge potentially. I might do that with mine, or I might get a couple extra just to see if I can accomplish that, because that would be a great tool to have in the outdoors. You have a dedicated Phillips. Now what might make you choose this is, number one, it's only 2 layers. It's 4 millimeters thick. It works with their bit kit, and it's going to work better in recessed areas. So if you don't want to have like spare bits like falling around and that kind of thing, you don't want to like go looking for them, this might be a better solution for you and allows you to carry 2 additional small implements or long implements depending on how you set up your tool. This is probably one of my favorite small things that they make. It's specifically for hooks, but it could be used to sharpen your blade as well. We have a little groove for sharpening hooks. You have these little spots here, which I found out are for bending hooks. I don't think I've ever used them for that. I've always used a plier, but that's what those are for. We have another flathead, which is a different option. It's a little bit wider and it has a bottle opener. Probably my least favorite of them, because I feel like they've cut more away than necessary. And with just a small change on the can opener, I could do this as both a can and bottle opener. So that's just my opinion. I would rather modify this slightly than have this one, and I'd rather have the extra strength that this provides. The reamer awl, it's a great option. It comes incredibly sharp. This is going to be a great package opener, and it has the hole necessary to do stitching if you want that. And then probably my favorite implement, second favorite implement that they make, is this chisel with a wire stripper, 2 different types. The only thing I will say about this is I hope that before they make their final, that they bring the blade back to this beginning edge so they have a wider chisel, and then they do the same thing they do on the Victorinox, which is make this little cornered edge, which allows it to be a package opener. That would be great. If they could make that just that one little change or 2 little changes, that would be fantastic, but you gotta have this in your tool. It's just awesome. It wouldn't be difficult to modify it for that extra little chisel edge right there anyway. We have a small serrated blade, which is quite nice. It would be also nice if they made one of these which was a chip knife, like in the shape of a carving tool. Hopefully they'll do that, but this is still fine. We have a pull cutter right here, which I find pretty limited in usefulness unless you open a lot of strapping. Like if you cut a lot of strapping, that's probably a really good thing to have. And then the last small tool that we'll talk about today is going to be this, which is a scaling tool and hook remover. I would never use this as a scaling tool. I want to be very clear about it. I would never use this as a scaling tool. If you've ever tried to get fish guts and scales out of a multi-tool, you will never do it again, ever, for the rest of your life. It will destroy a tool. That slime is awful. It's better off cutting a stick in half and then using the half edge to scrape off all of the scales on your fish. Don't do this, please. Please don't do this. Now, the hook puller part, that's probably fine, but just don't ever use this for scaling fish. I know it's tempting. I'm glad that it's removable because maybe I could just take it out and then use it separately. That's probably okay, but it's pretty short for it. I'd rather just, you know, carve a stick that turns it into a scaling tool. That's just my opinion. And then we have another reamer awl. The reason we're not talking about these, if I didn't say it already, is that they're not quite the same as what they advertise on the pre-order. These are designed to kind of work together, but they're a little bit too thick. They're like 4.2 millimeters, something like that, so they don't fit nicely with the rest of the tools. So for now, until we have the final production samples, which these are prototypes, I won't be talking about them. But they do have available a T8 Star. They have a couple of different Hex drivers like these, different sizes, whether it's a double layer one or a single layer one. But I don't know. Those are pretty specific tools, and you'd be better off getting just the bit driver, right? Or getting the Phillips and then getting the bit adapter, which lets you use the 4mm bits. That's just my kind of general opinion, unless the goal is to have the tool that adjusts these, which, let's see, which one is that? Is that it? No, it's not it. It's not it. Try this one. Well, I don't know which one it is, but theoretically, it would be nice to have something that can adjust the tool itself. But once again, I'd rather just have it as a separate bit kit or just having it as a standard 1/4 inch bit. I hope that gives you kind of a rundown if you're making your choices for this pre-order. And at this point, it's hard to argue that it's not worth it because you can decide exactly what you want. We've never seen this before. And I mean, Roxxon's been making some pretty good stuff lately. So you make your own decision. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a game changer. And the fact that it turns out you can fit 4 long implements in there, well, I mean, that was one of the biggest things people had. The only thing missing now is a one-handable blade. And I'll conclude with that. They have a blank there that they are selling, but it's one that goes flush with the frame. I hope they will also release blanks that you can get that have a cutout allowing it to be used one-handed. So they can then, you know, we could use those instead to make knives. So hopefully they will do that as a potential blank option in the future. And once it has a one-handable blade, I think it's got practically everything, well, I would want. But let me know, what tools are not available that you would prefer to have for this pre-order? With that, I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.